The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with noise and fear. Beings from 47 different worlds sat in their seats, all talking at once. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few looked like walking crystals. But they all shared the same emotion today: terror. At the center of the round room, a large screen showed moving pictures from space. Red dots moved across star maps like a disease spreading through a body. Each red dot meant death. Each dot meant another world had been eaten by the machines. Ambassador Kale stood up slowly. He was from the Zinthari Empire, and his body was made of living crystal that caught the light. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Friends," Kale said, and the room became quiet. "We are here because we are all going to die." The words hit the room like a physical blow. Some beings made sounds of fear. Others just stared at the screen. "The Devourers have taken 17 star systems in the last year," Kale continued. "They are not slowing down. They are getting faster." Representative Thex from the Aquarian Federation moved in her water tank. Her blue skin rippled with worry patterns. "Tell them about the hegemony," she said in her bubbling voice. Kale nodded. The Talon hegemony had the largest fleet in known space. 1 million ships. The finest warriors, the best weapons, shields that could stop stars from exploding. He paused. The Devourers destroyed them all in 6 days. Warlord Brix of the Talon hegemony slammed his clawed fist on his chair. His red eyes burned with anger and shame. "My people fought with honor. We followed every battle plan, used every weapon we had." "And you lost," said Elder Voss from the collective. Her voice was calm but sad. "Just like we did. Our bioships could heal themselves, could grow new weapons during battle. We had creatures the size of moons fighting for us." She looked down. "The Devourers absorbed them all in 3 hours. They learned how to copy our biotechnology and used it against us." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the stories. The Devourers were not just war machines. They were learning machines. Every time they fought someone new, they became stronger. They took the best parts of each enemy's technology and made it their own. "What do they even want?" asked Counselor Zeph from the trading union. His forearms waved nervously. "They want everything," Kyle answered. "They eat worlds. They take apart suns. They turn all matter into more of themselves. They do not talk. They do not make deals. They just consume." On the screen, new red dots appeared. The Devourers had taken 2 more systems while they talked. "We need a miracle," whispered Representative Thex. "We need the humans," said a small voice from the back. Everyone turned to look. It was Ambassador Nix from the Scientific Coalition. She was tiny, even for her species, but her large eyes were bright with intelligence. "Humans?" Warlord Brix laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "They have been in space for barely 100 years. They control 7 systems. 7! Some of us have been traveling the stars for millions of years. That is exactly why we need them," Nick said, standing up straighter. "Every species that has fought the Devourers has done the same thing. Big fleets, energy weapons, shield walls. All of us follow the same basic rules of warfare that we learned thousands of years ago." She walked to the center of the room, her small feet making no sound. "But humans are different. They have not learned our rules yet. They fight in ways that make no sense to us. Remember the border wars? The humans beat the Klaxon Empire using ships made of rocks and ice. Rocks and ice! Against energy shields and plasma cannons." Elder Voss leaned forward. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that maybe we need someone who does not know the right way to fight. Maybe we need someone crazy enough to try the wrong way." Kyle's crystal body sparkled as he thought. "The humans are unusual. Their military records show they often win battles they should lose. They use tactics that our computers say are impossible, because they do not trust computers to make all their choices." Nick said, "They still use intuition. They still improvise. They still take chances that no sane being would take." Warlord Brix shook his head. "This is foolish. One young species cannot do what all of us together have failed to do." "Can they do worse?" asked Thex quietly. "We are already losing. Our fleets are gone. Our worlds are being eaten. What do we have left to lose?" The room was quiet for a long time. On the screen, the red dots kept moving, kept spreading. Finally, Kale spoke. "If we ask the humans for help, what can they actually do? Their fleet is tiny. Their technology is basic. They do not even have proper energy shields yet." "I do not know," Nix admitted. "But I know this. Every time we have expected the humans to fail, they have surprised us. When the plague of mines attacked their colony ships, they found a cure in 3 days. When the crystal storms destroyed their mining stations, they learned to surf the storms instead of hiding from them. She looked around the room at all the frightened faces. Maybe they will surprise the Devourers too. The vote took 2 hours. There were arguments and debates. Some wanted to run away to another galaxy. Others wanted to build a giant fortress and hope the Devourers would give up. But in the end, fear won. Fear, and a tiny hope that somewhere in the universe there was still a species crazy enough to try something new. The message was sent to Earth that same day. It was simple. We need your help. Everything is ending. Please come. As the signal traveled through space toward the small blue world, Ambassador Kale looked at the screen one more time. The red dots were bigger now, closer to the Council worlds. What do you think they will send? Thex asked, Kale's crystal body dimmed with worry. I hope they send everything they have. I hope it is enough, but even he did not believe it would be. Admiral Daeho Kim stood in the command center of Luna Station, looking out at the stars through the big window. Earth hung in space below him, blue and white and beautiful. He had been staring at the message from the Galactic Council for 20 minutes now, and it still did not make sense. Sir, Captain Bomi Park stood behind him, waiting. She was young for a ship captain, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. The Council is waiting for our answer. Admiral Kim turned around. The command center was busy with people working at computers and talking on radios. But he could feel their eyes on him when they thought he was not looking. Everyone knew about the message. Everyone was scared. Tell me again what they are asking us to do, he said. Captain Park looked at the paper in her hands. The Galactic Council wants us to send our fleet to fight something called the Devourers. These machines have destroyed 17 star systems. They have eaten fleets with millions of ships. And how many ships do we have that can fight in deep space? Lieutenant Commander Wu Jin Lee looked up from his computer. He was a quiet man who knew everything about their military. 17 ships that are ready for combat, sir. The UES Harmony is our biggest, a heavy cruiser. Then we have 12 destroyers and 4 support ships. Admiral Kim nodded slowly. 17 ships. Against an enemy that destroyed millions. The room was very quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Strategic analyst Hyun-Soo Choi cleared his throat. He was the smartest person on the station, the man who planned all their battles. Sir, the math is simple. If these Devourers destroyed the Talon Hegemony's 1,000,000-ship fleet in 6 days, our 17 ships would last about 7 minutes. That is if we fight them the same way everyone else did, said a new voice. Everyone turned to look at Dr. Sujin Yoon. She was the station's expert on alien life and technology. She was also Admiral Kim's daughter, though they tried not to let that affect their work. What do you mean, Doctor? Admiral Kim asked. Dr. Yoon walked to the big table in the center of the room. She pressed some buttons and a map of the galaxy appeared above it. Red dots showed where the Devourers had attacked. I have been studying their attack patterns, she said. The Devourers are very smart, but they think in a specific way. They learn from every battle, but they only learn certain things. She pointed to the red dots. Look at this. Every species they fought used the same basic strategy. Lots of ships in formation, energy weapons firing in organized patterns, shields arranged in geometric shapes. It is all very mathematical. Captain Park leaned forward. That is how space battles work. You need organization and firepower. That is how space battles work for everyone else, Dr. Yoon corrected. But humans have never been everyone else. She pressed more buttons. New images appeared, pictures from human military history. Ancient sailing ships attacking in strange formations, airplanes diving out of the sun, submarines hiding under ice. We have always been improvisers, she continued. When the rules say we should lose, we change the rules. When logic says something is impossible, we try it anyway. Lieutenant Commander Lee shook his head. But this is different. These are machines that learn and adapt. They have destroyed civilizations that are millions of years old. Exactly, Dr. Yoon said, and her eyes were bright with excitement. They have learned to fight millions of years of tactics, but they have never fought humans. Admiral Kim studied the star map. The red dots were spreading like a disease, getting closer to Earth with each passing month. What are you suggesting, Doctor? I am suggesting we do not fight them the way they expect. Every other species sent their biggest fleets and their best weapons. What if we do something different? Strategic analyst Choi looked confused. Like what? Send fewer ships? That sounds like suicide. Maybe, Dr. Yoon admitted. But sometimes the best way to win is to make the enemy think they have already won. Admiral Kim was quiet for a long time. He thought about Earth, about his grandchildren playing in the parks of Seoul. He thought about humanity's short time in space, and how every other species thought they were primitive and foolish. Maybe they were right. Maybe humans were foolish, but sometimes being foolish was better than being predictable. Captain Park, he said finally, how long would it take to prepare the Harmony for deep space combat? 48 hours, sir. But Admiral, one ship against an entire invasion fleet. One ship, Admiral Kim repeated. Dr. Yoon, can your theories work with just one ship? Dr. Yoon bit her lip, thinking hard. It would be more dangerous. But yes, sir. In fact, it might work better. The Devourers expect fleets. They have learned to fight fleets. One ship might confuse their planning systems. Commander Lee was staring at them like they had gone insane. Sir, you are talking about sending one ship and 47 crew members against an enemy that destroyed entire civilizations. Yes, Admiral Kim said simply. I am. He walked back to the window and looked down at Earth. Somewhere down there, children were going to school. People were falling in love. Farmers were growing food. Artists were making beautiful things. All of it would disappear if the Devourers came. The council message said they need our help, he said without turning around. They did not say they needed our fleet. They said they needed us, humans. Captain Park stood up straighter. What are your orders, sir? Admiral Kim turned back to face the room. Every person there was looking at him, waiting for him to decide whether humanity would fight or run. Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them Earth accepts their request. We will deploy immediately. All 17 ships, sir? Asked Captain Park. No, one ship. The UES Harmony. Captain Jinwoo Han will command. The room was completely silent. Finally, Dr. Yoon spoke. Why Captain Han, sir? Admiral Kim smiled for the first time that day. Because Jinwoo Han is the kind of person who once flew a damaged fighter through an asteroid field to save a cargo ship full of refugees. Because he reads ancient military history for fun, and because when I asked him yesterday what he would do if he had to fight an impossible battle, he said he would find a way to make the enemy fight his battle instead of their own. He looked around the room at all the worried faces. The Devourers expect us to send a fleet because that is what everyone else did. They are prepared for overwhelming force and superior technology. They are not prepared for one small ship with a crew that thinks the impossible is just another word for Tuesday. Captain Park saluted. I will have the Harmony ready in 40 hours, sir. And Captain, tell Jinwoo that he has complete freedom to fight this battle any way he sees fit. No rules, no regulations, no limits. Just one order. Come home alive. As the meeting broke up and people rushed to prepare, Dr. Yoon stayed behind with her father. Do you really think this will work? She asked quietly. Admiral Kim looked out at the stars again. I think the only way to beat an enemy that learns from every defeat is to show them something they have never seen before. And what is that? A species crazy enough to think that one ship is exactly the right size for saving the galaxy. Captain Jinwoo Han stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching space bend and twist as they dropped out of hyperspace. The stars stopped moving, and suddenly they were in the Kepler 442 system. What they saw there made everyone on the bridge go very quiet. The space around them was full of ships, but not friendly ones. Thousands of dark, angular shapes moved through the system like a swarm of metal insects. Each ship was perfectly geometric, all sharp edges and glowing lines. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, like deadly art made real. Captain, Navigator Yejin Ko called out from her station. Her voice was tight with fear. I count 8,347 enemy vessels. They are everywhere. Through the main window, Captain Han could see the Devourer fleet at work. Some of the ships were taking apart a space station piece by piece like ants dismantling a dead tree. Others were harvesting asteroids, turning rock and metal into more ships. Everything they touched became part of them. Sir, Communications Officer Hae-won Moon said quietly, we are getting emergency signals from civilian ships. Refugee transports are trying to escape the system. The Devourers they are not letting them leave. Captain Han watched a small passenger ship try to run. 3 Devourer vessels surrounded it without hurry, like cats playing with a mouse. The passenger ship fired its small weapons, but the energy beams just disappeared into the dark hulls of the enemy ships. Then the Devourers fired back and the passenger ship simply stopped existing. 8,000 ships, Chief Engineer Min Hobaek said from his station. Captain, our weapons can maybe hurt 1 or 2 of them before they overwhelm us. Good thing we are not here to fight 8,000 ships, Captain Han said calmly. Everyone on the bridge looked at him. Tactical Officer So Young-an spoke first. Sir, what do you mean? Captain Han smiled, but it was not a happy smile. We are here to talk to them. Captain, these machines do not negotiate, Navigator Ko said. Every report says they just attack and consume. I know. But they are also learning machines, right? They study their enemies. They adapt their tactics based on what they see. Captain Han walked to the center of the bridge. What happens when a learning machine encounters something it has never seen before? Before anyone could answer, the ship's alarm started ringing. Tactical Officer An's hands flew over her controls. Sir, multiple Devourer ships are changing course toward us. They have detected our presence. On the main screen, dozens of the geometric ships turned away from their work and began moving toward the Harmony. They moved in perfect formation, like dancers who had practiced the same routine 1,000,000 times. How long until they reach us? Captain Han asked. 12 minutes at their current speed, An replied. Perfect. Communications, open a channel to the Devourer fleet. Officer Moon stared at him. Sir, they do not respond to communications. No one has ever successfully talked to them. That is because no one has ever said the right thing. Open the channel. Moon's fingers moved over her controls. The main screen flickered and changed. Instead of showing the approaching enemy ships, it now showed a pattern of geometric shapes and lines. The Devourer communication system. Channel open. Sir? Moon said. Captain Han straightened his uniform and looked directly at the screen. I am Captain Jin Woo Han of the United Earthship Harmony. You have invaded sovereign space and threatened civilian populations. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The bridge was completely silent. Everyone stared at their captain like he had lost his mind. They were one small ship facing 8,000 enemy vessels, and he was giving them an ultimatum. The response came quickly. The geometric patterns on the screen shifted and moved. The ship's computer translated the alien mathematics into words that appeared at the bottom of the screen. Single vessel detected. Minimal threat assessment, irrelevant. Absorption will commence in 8 minutes. Captain Han nodded as if this was exactly what he wanted to hear. That is what I thought you would say. He turned to face his crew. 47 humans looked back at him. Engineers, pilots, scientists, soldiers. They were young and old, experienced and new. But they all had the same expression. They trusted him even when they did not understand him. Everyone listened carefully, he said. Today we are going to do something that has never been done before. We are going to confuse a machine intelligence so badly that it forgets how to think. Chief Science Officer Yoon-ji Lim looked up from her instruments. Captain, I am reading massive energy buildups in the approaching Devourer ships. They are charging some kind of space-folding weapon. Right on schedule, Captain Han said. Chief Engineer Baek, are our special cargo containers ready? Yes, sir, but I still do not understand what they are supposed to do. Captain Han walked over to the engineering station. Remember how we learned to predict earthquakes on Earth? We studied the resonance patterns in rock and metal. We found out that everything vibrates at specific frequencies. Engineer Beck nodded slowly. And if you know the right frequency, you can make anything shake itself apart. Exactly. But what if instead of breaking something, you just make it? Confused? Before Beck could ask what that meant, Tactical Officer An called out urgently. Sir, the lead Devourer ships are in weapons range. They are targeting us. Good, deploy the cargo containers. Full spread pattern. All around the Harmony, cargo bay doors opened. Thousands of small metal containers shot out into space, spreading in all directions like seeds from a flower. To anyone watching, it looked like the humans were throwing away their supplies before they died. The Devourer ships approached without slowing down. Their weapons began to glow with deadly energy. But they were not worried about one small human ship. According to their calculations, this battle would be over in 30 seconds. They had calculated correctly. The battle would be over in 30 seconds. They just had not calculated who would win. Dr. Lim, Captain Han said quietly. Activate the resonance cascade. Science Officer Lim's hands moved over her controls. All around them, the small containers began to pulse with energy. But this was not the energy of weapons or shields. This was something much more subtle and much more dangerous. The containers were creating sound, not sound that ears could hear, but vibrations in the quantum fabric of space itself. Each container sang a different note, and together they created a harmony that touched the deepest frequencies of matter and energy. More importantly, they created a harmony that touched the communication frequencies the Devourers used to coordinate their attacks. Suddenly, 8,000 perfectly synchronized ships began receiving contradictory orders. "It is working," Communications Officer Moon shouted with excitement. "Their formation is breaking up." On the main screen, they could see the Devourer fleet beginning to waver. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination started to slow down, speed up, or change direction randomly. Some began firing their weapons at empty space. Others stopped moving entirely, as if they were trying to think through a problem they had never encountered before. "Phase 2, Captain Han announced. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed." Navigator Ko turned to stare at him. "Sir, ramming speed?" "You heard me. Plot a course for the largest Devourer ship. Maximum acceleration." "Captain," Tactical Officer On said urgently, "if we hit that thing at full speed, we will be destroyed." Captain Han looked around the bridge one more time at all the faces of his crew. These people had followed him into impossible danger because they trusted him. Now he was about to ask them to trust him with their lives, "I know," he said simply. "But sometimes the best way to win is to make the enemy think they have caught you." The Harmony shook as its engines pushed beyond their normal limits. Through the bridge windows, the massive Devourer ship grew larger and larger. It was like flying toward a metal mountain, dark, angular, and covered with weapon ports that glowed like evil eyes. "Hull stress at 60%, Chief Engineer Beck called out over the noise. "Sir, if we push the engines any harder, they will explode." "Keep pushing them," Captain Han replied calmly. He stood in the center of the bridge, watching the enemy ship fill their entire view. "How long until impact?" 90 seconds, Navigator Ko answered. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook on the controls. Around them, the Devourer fleet was still confused by the resonance cascade. Ships bumped into each other as they received different orders. Some tried to form attack formations while others tried to retreat. It was like watching a perfectly organized army suddenly forget how to march, but the confusion would not last forever. Already some of the Devourer ships were adapting, finding new frequencies to communicate on. "Sir," Tactical Officer On said urgently, "the smaller ships are starting to coordinate again. They are trying to establish new communication links." "Let them," Captain Han said. "We only need a few more minutes." Communications Officer Moon looked up from her station with worry in her eyes. "Captain, the Galactic Council observers are demanding to know where the rest of our fleet is. They say one ship cannot possibly succeed against this many enemies." Captain Han almost laughed. "Tell them this is our fleet. One ship, 47 crew members, and the best idea humanity has ever had. 60 seconds to impact," Ko announced. Chief Science Officer Lim was working frantically at her station. "Captain, I am reading massive structural changes in the target ship. It is trying to create some kind of capture field." "Perfect," Captain Han said. "That is exactly what I wanted to do." Everyone on the bridge stared at him. Tactical Officer On spoke for all of them. "Sir, you wanted to capture us?" "Think about it," Captain Han explained. "The Devourers do not just destroy ships. They absorb them, they take them apart, study the technology, and add it to their own capabilities. That is how they have become so powerful." Engineer Beck understood first. His eyes went wide. "You want them to try to absorb us." "The resonance containers were just the first part of the plan," Captain Han continued. "They confuse the enemy, but confusion only lasts so long. We need to do something that will hurt them permanently." 30 seconds to impact, Navigator Ko called out. Captain Han opened the ship's internal communication system. Throughout the Harmony, 47 humans stopped what they were doing and listened to their captain's voice. "All crew members, this is Captain Han. In 30 seconds, we are going to do something that has never been attempted before. We are going to let an enemy capture us on purpose." He paused, looking around the bridge at his officers. These people had families back on Earth. They had dreams and plans and people who loved them. And they were all about to risk everything because they trusted his crazy idea. "The Devourers think they understand us," he continued. "They think we are just another species with ships and weapons. They are wrong. We are humans, and when humans are cornered, we do not just fight back. We change the rules of the fight itself. 15 seconds, Ko announced. All crew to escape pods, Captain Han ordered. Set them for wide dispersal pattern. Make sure every pod goes in a different direction. The bridge crew looked at him in shock. Engineer Beck was the first to speak. Captain, what about you? Captain Han smiled sadly. Someone has to stay behind to trigger the final phase. The ship's reactor has been modified. Instead of normal safety protocols, it will create a cascading quantum failure when I activate it. Sir, you cannot fly the ship and reach an escape pod in time, Science Officer Lim protested. I know, Captain Han said quietly. I am not planning to leave. 5 seconds to impact, Navigator Ko said. Tears were running down her face. Go, Captain Han shouted. That is an order. Get to the escape pods now. The bridge crew ran for the exits, but they kept looking back at their captain. He stood alone in the center of the bridge, his hands moving over the control panels, preparing for what would happen next. The massive Devourer ship filled their entire view now. Captain Han could see details on its surface, weapon ports, sensor arrays, and most importantly, the glowing opening of its absorption chamber. This was where captured ships were taken to be studied and dismantled. The capture field grabbed the Harmony like a giant invisible hand. Instead of crashing into the enemy ship's hull, the human vessel was pulled into the geometric maze of the processing center. Around the Harmony, mechanical arms began to move. Scanning beams swept over the ship's hull. The Devourers were beginning their standard procedure. Analyze the vessel, learn its secrets, add its technology to their collective knowledge. But Captain Han had made sure the Harmony was not a standard vessel. As his crew's escape pods scattered into space, Captain Han made his final preparations. Dr. Lim and Engineer Baek had spent weeks modifying the ship's quantum reactor. Instead of containing its energy safely, the new configuration would let it interact catastrophically with the Devourer's absorption technology. The enemy machines had learned to absorb and copy thousands of different technologies, but they had never tried to absorb a reactor that was designed to fight back. Captain Han thought about his family on Earth. He thought about the children playing in Seoul's parks, the same parks where he had played as a boy. He thought about all the things humans had accomplished in their short time among the stars. Then, he thought about what would happen to all of that if the Devourers were not stopped. Here. His finger moved toward the activation. Switch, for humanity, he said quietly, and pressed the button. The quantum reactor began its cascade failure. But this was not a normal explosion. The modified reactor created a resonance pattern that spread through the quantum entanglement network the Devourers used to communicate. The effect was immediate and devastating. The massive ship that had captured the Harmony suddenly stopped all movement. Its lights flickered and went out. The mechanical arms froze in place. Then the effect spread to the next ship, and the next and the next. Throughout the Devourer fleet, 8,000 ships suddenly lost their connection to the hive mind that controlled them. Without their shared intelligence, each ship became just a machine following its last order. Some kept firing at empty space. Others flew in circles. Many just stopped moving entirely. In the space around the dying fleet, 47 escape pods drifted toward the rescue ships of a grateful galaxy. The humans inside watched through their small windows as the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known simply ended. Not with a massive battle or overwhelming firepower, but with one small ship and a captain who understood that sometimes the best way to kill a hive mind is to give it something it cannot digest. Captain Jin Woo Han never saw the enemy fleet go dark. But as the Harmony's reactor completed its cascade, his last thought was of Earth, blue and beautiful and safe. Admiral Dae-ho Kim stood before the Galactic Council 3 weeks later. The Great Hall was packed with beings from every corner of known space. They had all come to hear the impossible story, how one small ship had defeated an enemy that destroyed civilizations. The hall was completely silent as Admiral Kim began to read from his official report. On the 15th day of the 7th month, the United Earthship Harmony, under the command of Captain Jin Woo Han, successfully engaged and neutralized the Devourer threat in the Kepler 442 system. He paused and looked up at the assembled delegates. 3 weeks ago, these same beings had been preparing to flee the galaxy or hide in the furthest corners of space. Now they sat listening to a human explain how their worst nightmare had been ended by 17 containers and one man's sacrifice. The engagement lasted approximately 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Total casualties, 1 human vessel and 1 human life. Enemy casualties, complete destruction of the Devourer fleet and permanent neutralization of their hive mind network. Ambassador Kale's crystal body sparkled with what might have been amazement. Admiral Kim, please help us understand. The Devourers had 8,000 ships. How did 1 human vessel destroy them all? Admiral Kim smiled slightly. They did not destroy the ships, Ambassador. They destroyed the intelligence that controlled the ships. Captain Han understood something that the Devourers never learned. That the greatest strength can also be the greatest weakness. He pressed a button on his podium, and a holographic display appeared above the hall. It showed the final moments of the battle, the Harmony being pulled into the massive Devourer ship, the cascade failure spreading through the quantum network, and 8,000 war machines suddenly becoming 8,000 pieces of floating metal. The Devourers were unbeatable because they shared all knowledge instantly, Admiral Kim continued. Every ship knew what every other ship knew. Every adaptation was shared across the entire fleet. It made them incredibly powerful. Representative Thex rippled in her tank, but it also made them vulnerable. Exactly. When Captain Han triggered the cascade failure inside their absorption chamber, the effect spread through their entire network. Instead of just damaging 1 ship, it damaged their ability to think as a collective. Warlord Brix leaned forward with his red eyes burning with curiosity. But how did your captain know this would work? The quantum entanglement network was heavily protected. Admiral Kim's expression became sad and proud at the same time. Captain Han did not know it would work. He hoped it would work. That is the difference between humans and machines. We are willing to take risks based on hope rather than certainty. The hall buzzed with quiet conversations as beings tried to understand what they had heard. Elder Voss from the collective spoke for many of them. Admiral, I do not mean to question your victory, but this seems impossible. 1 ship against 8,000. 1 man against a collective intelligence that had never been defeated. It seems impossible because you are thinking like the Devourers did, Admiral Kim replied. You are thinking about numbers and firepower and technology. But Captain Han was not fighting their ships. He was fighting their way of thinking. He walked closer to the assembled delegates, looking at each of them in turn. Every species that faced the Devourers tried to beat them at their own game, bigger fleets, better weapons, stronger shields. But you cannot beat a learning machine by doing the same things everyone else has done. You have to show it something completely new. Ambassador Nix from the Scientific Coalition stood up excitedly. The resonance containers. They disrupted the Devourer coordination network. That was just the first step, Admiral Kim confirmed. The containers created enough confusion to let the Harmony get close to the main ship. But the real weapon was not the containers. What was it then? Asked Counselor Zeph. Admiral Kim was quiet for a moment, thinking about a man he had known for 20 years. A man who read ancient military history and played games with his children and always found a way to make people smile, even in the darkest times. The real weapon was Captain Jin Wuhan himself. His willingness to sacrifice everything for people he would never meet. His ability to see a solution where everyone else saw certain death. His understanding that sometimes the most human thing you can do is stand alone against impossible odds. The hall fell silent again. Finally, Ambassador Kale spoke. And the Devourer threat is truly ended? Yes. Without their hive mind network, the individual ships are just machines following their last orders. Some are still moving in circles. Others have shut down completely. Our technical teams are working with your scientists to safely dismantle them and study their technology. Elder Voss asked the question that everyone was thinking. Could this happen again? Could another machine? Intelligence threaten the galaxy? Admiral Kim considered this carefully. Perhaps. But if it does, the galaxy will be ready. Captain Han's sacrifice taught us something important. That the greatest weapon against any enemy is not superior technology. It is the willingness to think differently. He pressed another. button and the display changed to show the 47 escape pods being rescued by ships from a dozen different species. The crew of the Harmony survived because Captain Han made sure they had a chance to escape. They are back on Earth now, but they have volunteered to work with your military strategists. They want to teach others what they learned about fighting impossible battles. Representative Thex made a sound that might have been laughter. What did they learn? That humans do not fight to win, Admiral Kim said simply. We fight to protect what we love, and that makes us very dangerous enemies. The session continued for several more hours. There were questions about tactics and technology, about the future of galactic defense and the role humanity would play in it. But the most important question came at the very end, from a small being in the back of the hall. Admiral Kim, what should we call this new type of warfare? This strategy of using unexpected tactics against superior enemies? Admiral Kim thought about Captain Han, alone on the bridge of a doomed ship, pushing a button that would save the galaxy. We will call it the Han Protocol, he said. And the first rule of the Han Protocol is simple. When conventional wisdom says you should give up, find a way to make the enemy regret teaching you that lesson. As the council session ended and beings from across the galaxy began to leave, Ambassador Kale approached Admiral Kim. I have one more question, the crystal being said. Why did Captain Han volunteer for this mission? He must have known it was essentially suicide. Admiral Kim looked out through the hall's great windows at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning in space, blue and beautiful and safe. Because that is what humans do, he said quietly. When everything is ending and there is no hope left, we find a way to make hope. Not because we expect to survive, but because someone has to try. He turned to face the alien ambassador. Captain, Han once told me that the most important battle a person can fight is the one they choose to fight for others. He chose to fight for a galaxy full of strangers because he understood that in the end, we are all just trying to protect the people we love. Ambassador Kale's crystalline form sparkled with something that might have been respect. Your species is very strange, Admiral Kim. Admiral Kim smiled. Yes, we are. And sometimes being strange is exactly what the universe needs. As they left the Great Hall together, neither of them noticed the small memorial that had been placed near the entrance. It was a simple plaque, with Captain Jinwoo Han's name and a single line of text. One ship, one man, one galaxy saved. But perhaps the most important thing about the plaque was what happened next. Every being who passed it stopped to read those words, and many of them walked away thinking the same thought. If one human could do that, what could all of them do together? It was a thought that would change the galaxy forever.